Last week's episode may have been crazy, but this week's episode, insanity. Insanity in the sense that it was a lot of talking. This week you had everyone loving Gabby, even Gabby herself. Everyone still hates Eldians and the hint of Zeke's secret ass-wiping technique. As well, later in the video we'll be discussing MAPPA cutting content from the anime and why people are not liking the animation in this episode. But it's alright, as the kids say, wish in one hand and 1,000 duck-sized colossal titans in the other. Let's get into it. Before we talk about some of the biggest news that came from this week's episode, I want to just give a more analytical review of the episode itself. Earlier in the week, I gave my first impressions of the episode, but after a couple rewatches, I think this episode deserves so much more credit for what it has achieved. I do understand people's complaints with the episode being very talky, but I think some people may be missing the point of this episode entirely. This episode served as a great way to develop Marley and their conflict with Eldians and the other nations in the war. The other nations are developing weapons which can easily destroy titans, but as well are now using things like armored trains, ships, manned cannons, and now with the fear of advancements in aerial combat, aircraft. I said in last week's episode that I really loved how they're invoking real-life historical elements, and this just really butters my bread even more. The Titans that we have feared for 3 seasons are now at this point not as effective because of these new innovations in technology. But what's more surprising is Zeke proposes that he uses his last year of life to retake the founding Titan on Paradise Island. The interesting thing about this whole scene is that Zeke seems to have some sort of sway, even though he is an Eldian. I imagine that since he was a child after ratting out his parents, the Marleyans possibly realized this guy would never betray their trust and thus put a lot of trust in him. Then at some point he proved himself to be a brilliant mind, and thus he worked his way up the ranks like any other person. Also, there is a giant hole in their roof. They should probably get that fixed. As for Colt, I find the way he sees things quite fascinating. He sees Zeke as this very interesting person who seemingly has no royal blood, but he's this trusted by Marley. And it's things like these moments which really makes Attack on Titan so good. These little tidbits of scenes where Colt is simply just wondering about Zeke. Why is this guy so trusted? Though Zeke teases he's hiding a bit secret, which turned out to be a secret way to wipe his ass. Then we get some really bombshell info that Marley has sent 32 ships to Paradise and they haven't come back. This is actually huge in many ways. Think about it. In 4 years, how have they lost that many ships to people that have the technology that they don't? That's also considering their manpower too, so that's just insanity. It makes me theorize that they took those ships and converted the Marleyans on it to their side, or at the very least, if they weren't able to do that, take those ships as theirs. If that is the case, maybe they have already infiltrated them. I wonder. Reiner, Gabby, and Falco are all back on a train headed home. We see Falco really disparage the idea of Gabby getting the armor titan, that she'll die young at 27. Reiner then threatens to report Falco, which would see his family be turned into titan weapons, but most interestingly, Falco seems to respond in kind with this actor-like performance. I mean, it's a really good performance. In this performance, his response hammers in how in this world the Eldians are despised. But I think there is something subtle I missed initially in this scene. I doubt I'm the only one. Reiner tells Falco to become the armored titan so that Gabby won't suffer their dark fate. Reiner is basically telling Falco he doesn't want Gabby's life to be cut short and for her to suffer the same ways that he has. So, encourage Falco to do it. This also makes me wonder what Falco really thinks of Gabby. Does he have more romantic feelings for her, which is making him want to protect her? I don't know. This may be the first hint we see of that. And to be honest, I don't count when Gabby stripped and he blushed in episode 1 as a hint, but you know. Though, a very important mention, Falco doesn't know if he can trust Reiner. I mean, I would be conflicted too, especially if I was in his shoes and with what he said to me. Though I think Falco was starting to catch on to it all before this with his comments about Gabby, but Reiner telling him to become the armored titan to escape this dark fate, well, that just seemed to reinforce his feelings and thus creates an interesting wrinkle in Falco's character. Then you have the amazing scene where Reiner is describing the stories he had to tell from his days on Paradise Island, or Paradise. How do you pronounce that, by the way? Put it down in the comments below. Help me out. This scene isn't great just because we get to see callbacks to season 1 of the series, but it's amazing because of the direction and tone. As the camera slowly focuses in on Reiner, he's telling these stories, and everyone around him is shocked to hear all of this. These devils, these awful people that are trying to destroy Marley and the Eldians. The people who betrayed the Eldians and left them, they're normal people, seemingly. Then the mother gets up, closes the window, which is a very nice touch, a touch that should not go unfounded. It shows that they do not want this to be heard by anyone, and if so, they would be punished or possibly used as Titan weapons. Still, for years they've been told to focus their anger on them, but now, when met with real-life proof how normal they are, how they're not devils or savages, seemingly, it serves as a shock to the system. This leaves them all shocked as to the subtle realization that they aren't anything like what they were told they were. Then we get an awesome bit of teasing with the Warhammer Titan, which is home to the Tiber family that keeps themselves cut off from everything else. And I don't know about you guys, but Warhammer sounds like the name of a badass Titan. And seeing how they've named the Titans thus far, I think Warhammer Titan is going to be one major badass. At least I hope. I could be wrong. It could be 1,000 duck-sized colossal titans for all we know. But as well, Zeke realizes that if Marley becomes weak, then Eldians are also weakened in return, making their existence tied to one another. This means that if people on Paradise Island want to liberate them, they would probably have to go through Eldians and Marley to complete their goal. Taking back Paradise and the founding Titan is of most importance to them, as it allows Marley to reinforce itself once again to take on the Middle East and other nations. Overall, the episode was really quite amazing, and I think this episode really, to me, sells Attack on Titan as the modern equivalent, as close as you can get, of The Legend of Galactic Heroes. Now, I know that's like a space show, but I'm not talking about setting particularly. That show has lots of war politics, and Attack on Titan is fantastic at pulling that kind of thing off, just as Legend of the Galactic Heroes was. It really makes me want to go back and finish Legend of the Galactic Heroes, honestly. But now on to other big topics of the episode. Once again, there was a lot of controversy with how MAPPA is handling cut content, amongst other controversial things that have been happening. So, as always, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on these controversies, these talking points down in the comments below. So, in the next episode, I can pick some of your comments and discuss them further. Many people have been showing their frustrations regarding MAPPA's handling already with CGI animation and so on. You can go back to my previous video to hear me talk about that in more detail. But this week, there is yet another group of people mad at MAPPA for seemingly not adapting some content and cutting it. But I honestly don't think we can call this an issue just yet, as we have no guarantees the content is even cut at all. For those that don't know, adapting content isn't always just one-to-one what it is in the manga. Take, for example, with a recent release with ReZero Season 2, something I cover weekly on this channel, they made sweeping changes to the original source material by changing the whole order of events in some instances, cutting stuff out and creating new and original scenes with said cut content that do exactly the same thing as that cut content, but is better suited for the anime medium. I can get people's frustrations with this, I really can, because it's annoying if stuff is cut and not dropped. But I think this is just something we have to remain patient and see how it pays off, because the people that complain and bring out their pitchforks about this cut content are going to look really bad by episode 5 when that cut content was just swapped out or adapted differently. Well, what was all that complaining for anyways? You gotta ask yourself. But it's the internet. Everyone will find a way to complain anyways. So this week we have people complaining about the weighty animation of Attack on Titan. For those unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, this episode featured a lot of lifelike and weighty animation for characters. Some people think it looks choppy, awful, and what have you. Others think it is some of the best animation yet. It's 50-50 seemingly. To me, I don't think this animation style is an issue at all. Rather, it's just jarring, as it's a technique that it just isn't really used often. Most people are used to characters remaining static, as the animation focuses more on characters' facial expressions. Let's face it, see what I did there? When people see something new and something that has been done the same for decades, people complain and don't like it because it's different. It takes a moment to get used to. That's just the way it is. But I guarantee you, most people don't even have a problem with this stuff to begin with. I understand why they'd not like it, and that's totally fine, but it's something that to me enhances the experience and makes it more than just static bodies with good facial expressions. Now we have emotive body movements with honest to God body emotions paired with MAPPA's already expressive facial expressions. Also, speaking of the internet, be careful in the comment sections, guys, especially on my videos. I try to delete all that I can, but people are out there spoiling stuff, like a lot. So a fair warning to all of you, just don't read the comment sections outside of my pinned comment or my hearted comments. Otherwise, there's a possibility that you may be spoiled. Though I will try to delete all I can. Anyways, on to one of my last topics of the videos and where I get your guys' comments from my last AOT videos. So there's this topic of Reiner, who I think has really started to shine as a character this season, and a lot of you guys seem to agree. Ariel Noel commented, "Watching Reiner in this season shows me how messed up he got." And I cannot agree more. Reiner also has this split personality that we saw in season 2, where to keep track of the two lives he's living, and now on top with the issues that he's dealing with of coming back home and seeing how much he's lost, it's difficult for him. He's lost Annie and Berthold, but also in a sense, a whole other life in paradise. Now he has to exterminate the people that he lived with for so long and came to like. At this point, Reiner just wants to live out his 2 years doing anything he can possibly do to justify everything he's done up until this point. You know, just to find that silver lining in his grim life. Honestly, Reiner is an amazing character this season, and he's already a shining example of great characterization in this season. Now, some other comments I've gotten are actually in relation to Gabby of all people. We have Aggressive Digital, I love that name, says, "SeaTactics, I'm always gonna love Gabby. Me, who read the manga. Okay. Stop this, guys. Gabby is wholesome. She's sweet, and everyone loves Gabby. Come on, do it with me. Gabby." Okay, I'm just kidding. Listen. I've gotten so many comments, hundreds, not kidding, about how much people are hating on Gabby and how I'm gonna eventually hate her. At this point, you guys that are saying this are more than often not just gonna convince me to love her even more. So what I suggest is telling everyone how much you love Gabby. It'll be like reverse psychology. Trust me, it'll work. But I want to hear your thoughts on all that we talked about in today's video. Be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe and ring the bell, because we've got a lot of Attack on Titan content coming out weekly on this channel, and I promise you, you don't want to miss any of it. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.